Hello, it's Misty, and I want to welcome you to another Creative Weekly Wisdom here at Creating the Crafty Life. And today I'm going to share with you guys different mediums you can turn into watercolors. So I'm starting off with a hardboard panel, and I will share a link below where you can purchase this. You want to hold down your paper and tape it down like I did here, and you want to use a low tack adhesive like this 3M micropore tape, or you could also use like painter's tape works. You want this so that this paper here is not going to warp while you're wetting it, because it is watercolor paper and you're using a lot of water. So I'm starting off with this watercolor paper here by Strathmore. It is the 300 series. It comes in various sizes. I have the 9 by 12, and I have it cut down to 6 by 4.5. And I'm going to do several panels today and just show you how to create backgrounds using different mediums. So if you don't have specifically watercolors, that's okay. You don't need watercolors to get an actual watercolor look. So because they are water-based, you're going to be watering down various things. And today we're going to start off with, first I'm going to use some acrylic paint. This is probably something that most of you have, and it doesn't have to be fancy. This is Craft Smart, and I believe this is from Michael's. There's Michael's brand, and it's very, very cheap. So any cheap paint will work, and you only need a small amount. So what I'm going to do is I have this acrylic block, and I'm going to be putting all my ink surfaces, my paint, all my mediums on here, and then we're going to add water to water it down and add it to here. So first I'm going to start off with just some of this really light pink. Now, paint is much more thick and pigmented than ink or watercolor, so you don't need a lot, because we're going to water it down and it's going to turn into a lot more. So you just need almost just like a drop or so. First, you want to prep your surface. You're going to take a very wide brush. You can also use a smaller brush, but this just makes it easier to lay down more water faster before it starts to dry. And you're just going to water down the surface, put a nice layer all the way across. This way it gives a nice base for your watercolors to move around. That way they don't start drying and absorbing in little puddles. You can get everything moving. You do want to make sure you have paper towels, and I like to have a spray bottle as well, just in case you need to move that color around more to get rid of the harsh edges. So you want to have some paper towels. That's just for dabbing up excess color, or if you want to lighten your color, and then also for definitely cleaning your brush in between each. You want to make sure you're doing that so your colors don't start to muddle and turn into colors that you don't want. You can see that there is a watercolor effect occurring, and then we're just going to go ahead and speed up the drying time here. Okay, and I wanted to show you that you can layer using the paint. So you see how we dried the first layer. Now we're not doing a wash of water on top of this, so it's not going to move as much. So you want to make sure that your watercolors are watered down quite a bit, just so that you don't have a lot of just it not moving around on your paper, because it is paint. But you can definitely just take it, and if you dry it in between, you can see that you'll definitely get it where it's not going to change color into the one that you have below it. And then of course you can spritz again if you want to soften up edges. You can do that.
that you'll take it into her side.
you can really see the color on there. I think that came out beautifully. Okay, so now we're going to start with our next set of mediums here, and we're going to use some dye ink. These are by Hero Arts. Any dye ink will work. I just happen to have these. You can use the full-size pad, but when you're watercoloring or doing other ink techniques where you're smushing and stuff like that, these little cubes work really, really good because you don't need a whole cube of ink, and you can fit a lot more colors on your acrylic block. So I'm going to go with this Passion Purple. I'm just going to smush a little bit down. Now the good thing about ink like this is it does go a long way. And you can see, now this is dye ink, and I usually use the Distress ink, which I'll show you, but this ink looks really pretty and looks just like watercolors to me. And I really like it, and you can see how you get that vibrant color, but it's very thin, so it'll move around easily. And you don't get the big pools of color that just want to kind of stay in just the little areas. They'll kind of move around wherever you put them. Now you can try this with pigment ink. The pigment ink might have a little bit more of a creamier colored look to it versus dye ink, because dye ink's a little bit more translucent. You can try this with any ink really, and this, I just wanted to show you how inks look when you turn them into watercolors. So next we're going to do, which is my favorite, and I probably watercolor with these the most, and that is Distress inks. Distress inks or oxide inks, they both work very similar for watercoloring. They both have a lot of different properties and stuff, but with watercoloring you can use the cubes, you can use the full-size pads, which the oxide ink currently does not come in the mini cubes, so I still use the regular Distress inks for watercoloring because they come in the mini cube. But you can use either or for watercoloring, whichever ones you have. And I know a lot of us have these, or Distress inks of some kind, so you really don't need a lot of other stuff when you've got these. So we're going to do Evergreen Bow. That's going to be like our greenish blue color that we're doing. Probably more on the green side for this one. Then we're going to do Shaded Lilac. That's going to be our lighter purple color. And if you can see already that these are more juicy when they go down and more vibrant in color than when you saw the dye inks, because dye inks are traditionally, they have a much more translucent look to them, and Distress inks, which I do believe are a dye based ink, but they have some different properties in them, and one of the things I do love is that they are more vibrant, and which makes watercoloring a lot easier. And then we have sponge sugar, and this one might be a little light in color, so I might have to go ahead and grab a different pink, which I think I will go do right now. Just for the purposes of this demo here, I'm going to go ahead and pick the raspberry, which is a much brighter pink, as you can tell the difference. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to add it right on top of the other one because it won't matter, but you can see it showing up on the acrylic block much brighter. Start with this bright pink. Now you can see when I add the water, you still get this bright pool. Now when I did it with the dye ink here, when I added the water, it almost disappeared. So that's why I like using this. It waters down, and you can see, look how vibrant that is. I just love, I mean, you can really see it. It was a little harder on the dye ink. Okay, so what I just did is I made sure I really dried it. So when I did it last time, when I was doing this down, I could tell that it was still too wet and my color was starting to disperse instead of being droplets, which is what I wanted. And then I just put in a little bit of the shaded lilac, which actually comes out a little bluer if you didn't notice before. And then to get this a little bit more purple, I added in just a touch of the picked raspberry. So of course you can even create your own colors just by doing a little bit of mixing. Okay, so here we go, and now we're gonna call it done. Just gonna go ahead and dry that, and then we'll move on to our last medium. This is the Illustrious Coral Gold, the Ethereal Emerald Green, and then we're working with Mountain Lavender. And so because they have that two-toned, like metallic sparkle type finish, it's not a glittery finish. The sprays have the glitter, but these have like a very metallic look in the light when you change it. So you're gonna see how this one may look a bit different than the rest. So this is fun if you just want a different look and technique that you're kind of going for. and it's kind of what mica powders are designed for. Not necessarily watercoloring per se, but you just use like a watercolor brush and you dip it and you paint it, and you can just do all sorts of things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same things. I'm going to put them on the acrylic block, not directly on the paper. Now usually when you use mica powders, you put them directly on the paper, and then you get a much more in-depth color finish and a much more, you'll see what I'm talking about in a second here. So we're going to go ahead and start off with just washing the background with lots of water. Now for the mica one, I've learned in the past, this one you do want to go a bit more on the water so that it runs, because mica powders will dry very quickly and almost not move. I like to spritz right over the paintbrush because that's where you just picked up all that color. Now you definitely have to either have multiple paintbrushes, or you're going to have to really rinse between these because the colors really like to stay in the bristles. Okay, so we started off where we have, they'll be pictured at the end as well, so you can really see the difference. I'll have them all sit next to each other. But this is what the acrylic paint looks like. This is what we got with the dye ink. So you can tell, I mean, I tried to use similar colors, which I think they're pretty close. And then this is using the distress ink. Now you can see with the distress ink that all the colors kind of blend together a lot different. You don't have like the spots. You don't have, you know, that you get on both of these. You have a much more blended look. That is the look I prefer. Now of course, if you don't want such a blended look, all you do is you just don't water it down quite so much, and then they'll have more of that almost dripped look. And then this is the last one we did with the mica powders, which I'm going to tell you right now is like really, really cool looking. You get the same kind of blended, not quite as much, but as you do as the distress inks. But the thing is on this is you have a metallic finish. You can sort of see. So those are 4 different mediums that you guys can use to watercolor with. I hope you enjoyed.